Hello everyone and welcome on new coach of Academy Lab Guide. I'm Corentin Guinez, driver for Simmercy, and today we are on Oulton Park for the third week of the Sports Car Challenge by Falcon Tire. As you can see, we're using the BMW M4 EVO GT4. So as usual, at first we're gonna have a look at the hot lap and then we'll get into more details during the guide. So yep, let's get started. Alright, so we go for the hot lap around Oulton Park with the M4. So we are going down turn 1, we're just gonna go now on the brakes, trying to bring the car on the brakes on the curb, and once you are on the curb, basically you can just go back on power, trying to make sure you're not using too much curbs at the same time because the M4 doesn't really like the curbs. Now into the downhill corner, trying to make sure I'm not carrying too much speed, bringing the car close to the curb on the inside, and as soon as the car is settled on the inside, I can go back on power, making sure I'm not picking too much of a steer on the way out. Now we are going through this really fast left on the exit road on the right, just lifting, a bit of braking, and trying to make sure I'm not going too wide as well on the exit. Now we are going quite deep on the brakes, trying to stick to the inside. I have a tight exit, opening the steering on the way out. Now we are going into the first chicane. We're just gonna go on the brake just right now, trying to drive across the curb, dropping side after the curb, trying to make sure I'm not going too wide on the exit at the same time, to not clip the grass. Now going down the second chicane, you're gonna brake at the 100 board, down the gears, down to third, clipping the curb on the inside, making sure I can have a tight exit out of this left one so that I can prepare this right one, which leads to the maybe last third of the track. Up to fifth, just right now. Now climbing this small crest. Then we're gonna go through the curb on the left, and just after the curb, gonna go on the brake, down to fourth, trying to get both apexes, smashing the throttle now, making sure I'm not climbing too much over the curb on the left. And now we are heading to the last corner, just on top of that crest now, just going on the brake, down the gears, down to third, trying to make sure I'm using all of the curb on the inside, opting the steering on the way out, not using too much curb on the outside, and we are just right now crossing the line for the lap around Oulton Park. Alright guys, so we go for the guide this time. So we start from the start finish line, and then as you could see, and as you know, the distance between the start finish line and the turn one is quite close. So as a braking reference, usually I'm just looking at that part of the white line, or the braking zone, I would say. You can see that the gap between the grass and the white line seems to be a bit bigger around there. So that's pretty much a reference I'm using every time. So as you can see, as soon as I'm getting close to it, I'm just going on the brake. The idea there is to um, the idea there is not to brake too much, because obviously you can carry quite some speed, but at the same time you don't want to get into the ABS as well. So you might brake a bit longer going into these corners and harder, because as I said, you need the rotation, you need to carry some speed as well. So yeah, just gonna brake around that part of the line, and then as you can see, around 70% or something, but I'm quickly releasing the brakes. And as I'm getting near the curbing, I'm actually starting to go back on board to get the rotation. So fourth gear, climbing the curb on the right. And as you can see, I'm just trying to make sure I'm not going too far to the left over the curbs, because the M4 doesn't really like it. With the Mustang, it's a bit better. With the Porsche, it's fine. MG is quite okay as well, but the M4 is really the one who doesn't like really the curbs and the small safari rides, I would say. If you go a bit on the grass or the clip a tiny bit of gravel, the car doesn't like it at all. So yeah, you have to make sure you take this in mind and don't choose too much of the curbs. Obviously, on the inside like this, it's okay, but it's mostly when you are going out of a corner, when you need traction and stuff. The car doesn't like it, so you can lose a bit of time here, but it's not massive, but it's still maybe a matter of thousands and stuff. But if you add all those few thousands, it can be a bit of time at the end of a lap. So yeah, just make sure you're not being too greedy on the exits. Now we are going down turn, I guess this is turn 2, so this might be turn 3. Basically for this corner, I'm just, you can see that there is like a sort of uh, of dip, like it goes suddenly really downhill. So this is what I'm using. I'm trying to brake just before that, so you can see it right there. This is the reference I'm using every time, mostly with GT cars, because I'm not really driving often with single seaters, but yeah, with or prototypes, but with the GT4s and GT cars. Usually, I'm using that reference. So just before that sort of deep or sudden downhill. So on the brakes, and as soon as the car is um settled into the corner, I've just tried to make sure I can bring the car close to the curbing, without climbing the curb, because as I said, the car doesn't really like the curbs overall around the lap, and I think the fact that now it's 3D curbs is not the best option as well, to use the curbs with any other cars. So yeah, so just bringing the car close to the curb. As you can see, I'm not braking massively. Entry is about 70%, and as soon as the car is settled, I just brake slightly to just put the car into the corner, and as soon as I'm mid corner, then I can just smash the power. I just make sure I get this exit tight, so then I can just smash the throttle early, open the steering, and then this means I don't need to use too much of the curbing, and bit of grass as well, or not really grass, but yeah, it's a bit of runoff, which once again the car doesn't really like. Now we will head into this really fast left. So as I said, during the hot lap, we're gonna use the this is not an exit road. I said exit road, but it's like the layout of the of another. It's a part of the other layout, the smaller layout. I don't really know how this layout is called, but yeah. Anyway, close to the other part of the track, I'm just gonna basically just lift and brake a tiny bit. So as you can see, just braking about 25% or so. It's not that big, but it's just good enough to like give a bit of rotation without compromising too much the the speed through the corner. So just a bit of braking. I think I stay with fifth gear for that one. No need to drop too fast. You wanna stay with high gears to not, as I said, kill the momentum. And yeah, then the idea out of this one is to make sure you pick up the throttle quite early, but at the same time not too early and not too hard, because you don't wanna bring the car far wide before heading into this long hairpin. Otherwise, you will end up having to put more steering angle, and it's not ideal because you need to um, get the throttle quite early into this hairpin. So the idea is to make sure you are capable to keep as much speed as you can by not crossing the middle of the track, and yeah, being able to bring the car to the left. Entering the hairpin is definitely the way to do it. So yeah. Now once you reach the you can see that there is, after this thing, I don't know if it's dirt or whatever, but as soon as you are getting by this, you can pretty much prepare yourself to just go on the brake. So as you can see, quite deep on the brake, but at the same time it's not that deep at the end, because with the banking it's quite easy to get the grip, so you don't really need to brake massively, thanks to the banking, which really helps actually to get the traction as well and get the grip into the corner. So just after that thing, we're just gonna go on the brake, as I said, dropping down to fourth. I think we are dropping down to third as well. Down to third, and then as you can see, I keep the brake until I'm really into the corner. So once I'm really into the corner, I'm just releasing the brakes, and as soon as I'm mid corner, then I just manage with power, trying to make sure I can go early on power, but at the same time um not too much, because I don't want to pick up some understeer, as I will need to open the steering to avoid the understeer. So yeah, I just wait until I'm really out of the curb, even if I'm not on the curb. But once I'm by, when I'm past the curb, then I can just open the steering, go on power, and at the same time I don't wanna um like get a wider exit, because if I'm taking a wider exit, I might end up driving on the curb on the left, and that's not really what you want in terms of traction. So yeah, now heading into the first chicane. So basically for that one, I'm using. I don't know if you can really see it properly because it's a bit difficult, but you can see it slightly more. But it's also really, it's not really visible as well when you are driving. There is some like the tarmac is a bit different. The color is a bit different at that point. It looks like there is it's not dust, but I don't know. It's really different. There was oil or something, and they've put some things on it to remove the oil or whatever. That's what I'm using. I know it's you can barely see it, but I guess if you are driving on your own, you can see it a bit better. But just right there, there is some. It's a bit lighter, I would say, on the track. So that's what I'm using. And basically, as soon as I'm like maybe 10 meters away from that, I'm just gonna go on the brake. That's the only reference I have, to be honest, because going into this one, if I'm going a bit back, like you have no boards, you have basically nothing to really um tell you what to do. Maybe one thing that could work, I just looked at it now, is that you have the tire wall, which goes a bit further to the right, which leaves then some places to gravel. So it's just right there. Actually, I think it does match where I'm actually braking. But yeah, once again, that's not really something I would personally focus on. But obviously, if you have no references, this could be a good starting point. But once again, it's on the right. I just prefer to keep my eyes where I'm actually going, because it's not actually really where you're going to go. So I just prefer to look at this, even if you can barely see it. But yeah, that's what I'm using. Just make sure you check this out during the practice, and yeah, hopefully it works for you as well. Once I'm maybe 10 meters away from that, I'm just going to go on the brake. I'm going to go down the gears, and the idea is to make sure you can just go through the curb with the car being as straight as possible. You don't want to have too much steering angle while you go over this curbing. So yeah, basically just try to drive straight through the curb. And once I'm off the curb, I just drop down to third. I don't drop third while I'm on the curb. Otherwise, it can be quite bad, I would say. So I just prefer to wait the curb being a bit more stable out of the curb. Then I put third, and very important to make sure you're not carrying too much speed. As I said during the out lap, you don't want to end up going too wide out of this right one, because it's really easy to clip the grass on the left, and the car doesn't like it at all. So you want to make sure you keep a bit of a margin. As you can see, it's close, but it's good enough to not clip the grass and lose time. So that's what you need to do. Carrying more speed, and you will end up going wider. Or then if you don't want to lift on the exit, you will clip the grass and lose time. And if you don't want to clip the grass, you're going to have to lift on the exit, which is terrible, because then it's not a massive straight, but it's still a bit of a straight, which can maybe lead to an overtake, because it's a slow corner, even if it's risky to go for a move into this corner. But yeah. So on the brakes, and then as soon as I'm taking the curb on the right, just next to the big bollard of tires, then you can just go on power, trying to make sure I'm not smashing the power too early to get wild. And then yeah, I just have to drive around the cabs. Now we are heading into the second chicane. As I said, 100 board, quite deep on the brakes, around 90%. I think it's a tiny bit too deep, but it seems to be quite okay actually. So just around the 100 board, as I said, just right there, maybe a bit before. Actually, the idea there is to make sure really with any cars you don't brake too late, because you want to get tight exit out of this one and out of the second one as well, because then you have to prepare the exit which leads to the straight, even if it's not really straight, but then it's uphill. So obviously, if you don't have the momentum, you're going to lose time because it's uphill. So the idea there is to make sure you really nail the exit of those two parts of the chicane, so then you can have a really smooth exit and quick exit out of this of the sector of the chicane. So yeah. So on the brakes, we're gonna go down to third, steering to the right, releasing the brakes, taking the curb, having a sort of tight exit. It's not really tight exit, because as you can imagine, the idea is not to drive close to the white line on the right. But yeah, when I say tight exit, you surely understand what I mean. Then lifting a bit of braking, turning to the left. And when I speak about tight exit, the idea there is to make sure you can bring back the car to the left before heading into this right one. The car is on the left, it's close to the line, that's perfect. Now we just need to put a bit of braking once the car is really alongside the line. the idea there is to make sure you're not turning in too late as well, because it's really easy to turn it a bit too late, and then you end up going wide on the exit. So you need to you have to make sure you're not scared of actually taking the curb on the inside. It doesn't make the car move too much. I know it can it the curb doesn't look um insane looking at this with the sort of tip right there, but it's definitely not too bad to use. Actually, the car doesn't move too much, and you are not compromising traction too much. So yeah, that's I think it's the way to go in my opinion. Just drive on the curb, and as soon as the car is off the curb, you can just go on power, trying to make sure you're not going too wide, as I said during the hot lap, and as I keep saying that all the time, to not use the curb too much on the exit to maximize the traction. And now we are going uphill, entering the last third of the lap, I'd say. So for this curbing right there, just drive across the curb, and once you are off that curb, you're just going to go on the brake down to fourth gear, not first, and yeah, then you just hold the brakes until you are reaching the you are facing pretty much the exit of this first right. So as you can see, on the brakes 60% or so, fourth gear, and as soon as I'm reaching the apex, then I just move on throttle, because from there the car has the flow of the corner. The car is stable and settled into the corner. So from there you just have to um, go on power to keep the rotation you've got from the brakes to the throttle, and then from there you just make sure you can take slightly the curb on the inside and not going too wide on the exit, not using too much curb. Just like that, it was perfect. I'm just using the edge of the curb. And now we are heading into the last corner. So just after that board, which indicates you that it's a right-hander, you have a sort of crest just after that board. That's the one I'm actually using as a braking reference. As soon as I'm on top of that crest, I'm just gonna go on the brake, trying to brake straight at the beginning, and then I will try to enter this corner a bit later, so then I can have a sort of late apex, even if it's not crazy late apex, but it actually helps me to um, get the best traction possible, because the car is a bit light on top of that crest. So the idea is to really make sure you can have the wheels as straight as possible in order to get the best traction possible. So braking at maybe, yeah, close to 90% or so. So it's quite a deep braking zone. Down to third, taking a sort of late apex, taking the curb, and as soon as I'm out of the curb, opening the steering with third gear up to fourth, not using that much curbing, as you can see on the way out, just a little bit, up to fourth, up to fifth gear now, and we are crossing the line, and that's it for the lap around Oulton Park. Alright, everyone, well done for today. That was the third week lap guide of this podcast challenge by Falcon Tire, together with Oulton Park and the BMW M4 EVO GT4. As usual, don't forget to like and subscribe to the Coach Dev Academy channel, and join the Discord server if you have any questions about all the work we're providing. And I see you next week for the first week.